Yeah, Shalom Israel. Before I start, I want to give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Baharak HaKadosh. Bless to the elders and apostles in Israel who really teach well, to the Akims and the Iwas and Bibles and those pushing videos in truth and sincerity, to the brothers and sisters in the truth. Now, this should only be something short. It's one article that I came across that I wanted to touch quickly. Because this kingdom that we're in, it's a wicked kingdom. It was built upon wickedness. Hold on, let me quickly bring this out. It was built upon wickedness, and we shouldn't really be surprised when we see wickedness is perpetrated, when we see wrong judgments being given out. This is Sirach 10 and 8. It says, because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another. And this is how this kingdom was established, through injuries, through unrighteous dealings, slakia, injuries, and riches got by deceit. And this is one of the reasons why the Mosai is looking to bring this place down, and in due time, as the scripture says, he will set over it one that is profitable, which will be the elect of Israel. I just want to quickly touch this article here. It says, nurse fined for pulling into bus lane to allow ambulance to pass. Now, over in the UK, we have what's known as bus lanes, and vehicles ain't meant to drive in them. At times, some of them have a time when you can and can't drive through them, but obviously this lady drove through this one when she wasn't meant to. But it says a nurse was slapped with a £30 for pulling into a bus lane to let a blue lighted ambulance to pass. So this ambulance was on its way to an emergency. Yeah, and she pulled into the bus lane to let it pass. It says Gwen Bednall had been driving home when she saw an ambulance approaching from behind. Gwen, who has been a nurse for over 20 years, moved into the bus lane but was left shocked after the fine came through the post. She told Derbyshire Live, I can remember it exactly because I knew I did it. I did it for a reason and I knew why I had done it. It was going fast and had its blue lights on, so I didn't think. I thought they would let me off as I thought it was so clear what I had done. And even if it wasn't clear why she pulled it into the bus lane at the times, because sometimes from the camera, actually, let me show you. If you look at the picture here, I'm assuming this is a vehicle, but you can't really see that there's an emergency vehicle coming or anything that I can tell. This might be down here. Yeah. Once you appeal and give your reasons, these things should be taken into consideration. So she said, so it says, Gwen was told she should have, let me start, missed a bit. It says, I thought they would let me off as I thought it was so clear what I had done. Gwen was told she should have left the bus lane clear for the ambulance to use, but says she could see several cars ahead of her in that lane after the bus lane ended, waiting to turn. She said if I moved left, then the right lane was free and it could go charging into town. If I stayed where I was, both lanes would have been blocked. So I thought I would be exempt as my priority was to let the ambulance pass, especially with no buses coming. What you can't see from the camera is what was ahead of me, and I could see all the cars blocking the way. So I thought it made sense for me to clear my lane for the ambulance. When challenged to fine but was told to pay up and say she would do the same again in the future. She said it just seems like a bit of a job's worth who isn't taking anything into consideration. And you have to remember, a lot of these things that they put in place is to actually make money. The bus lanes, like even now after the pandemic, majority of bus lanes over here used to have a certain time. So say like from 7 in the morning till 10, you can't drive in the bus lane, and then from 4 until 7 in the evening, you can't drive in the bus lane. But between those times, you could, make traffic flow a bit easier instead of everyone packed up in one lane. Since the pandemic, what they have done now is made it, most of them is 24 hours. You just can't enter it at all. And many times you see like cars pile up in one lane and the bus lane just empty. So all of these are money making schemes, just like parking permits. You can't drive your car on the road unless you have a car tax. Your vehicle has to be taxed for you to drive on the road and for you to park it on the road. But then you have to pay for a permit to park where you live. These things are just all money making, man. That's why the scripture says, okay, so 10 and 8 again. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries and riches got by deceit. This how this kingdom was established upon unrighteous dealings, injuries and riches got by deceit. So she said it just seems like a bit of a job's worth who isn't taking anything into consideration. I think I made the more sensible decision and the process is very blinkered. It's almost like bus lane, that's it. Everyone else said it's ridiculous. The ambulance wasn't making an any attempts like to go into the bus lane. It was obviously what to go into town and could lightly see what I could see, but the camera doesn't pick that up. So I still did it again. You'd let an ambulance pass, wouldn't you, or an emergency vehicle? So this is the things, when we put it in perspective with the walk that we're trying to do, walk, we're living a lifestyle which is totally contrary to what this system is and what it promotes. And there's going to be times where we have to suffer for doing right. The scripture says this is 1 Peter 2 and 20. But what glory is it? Start 1 Peter 2 and 19. For this is thankworthy if a man for conscience towards the Most High endure grief, suffering wrongly. For what glory is it if, when ye be buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently? But if, when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable with the Most High. So this is what we're going to face at times in this walk. Us being wrongly accused or given wrong judgment because we're trying to walk a walk which is totally contrary to this world. But at the same time, we're trying to walk a walk which is pleasing and acceptable to the Most High. And that's who, we want to please. It says, for even unto where you called, because the Mashiach also suffered for us, leaving us an example. And when we look at what Yahushua went through, he was wrongly accused, unjustly put to death, but he suffered those things. So these are things which we ourselves in this walk is going to have to learn to put up with at times, suffering for wrongdoing. But it's better to suffer for wrongdoing, as the scripture says, than for suffering for when you have done wrong. So I read that again. For even there unto where he called, because the Mashiach also suffered for us, leaving us an example that he should follow his steps. And this is what we're trying to do in this walk. Follow the steps that Yahushua left us, man. And part of that is knowing that we will suffer for doing good. But this is pleasing to the Most High. 1 Peter 3 and 16 says, having a good conscience, that whereas they speak evil of you as of evildoers, they may be ashamed that falsely accuse you of good conversation in the Mashiach. For it is better, if the will of the Most High be so, that you suffer for well-doing than for evil-doing. And it says, if the will of the Most High be so, because at the end of the day, it's the Most High who allows these things to happen to us. And part of that is probably our test, part of our refining process. Proverbs 29 and 2 says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked bear fruit, the people mourn. So it shows you the type of kingdom that we're living in. It is an unrighteous kingdom, not a righteous kingdom. This is Sirach 10 and 2 says, as the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. And what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein. So we know that the leaders of this world is corrupt, and the officers that they set underneath them will also be corrupt, because they want them to continue the things which they've put in place. You don't want to be a corrupt leader and then put people who's going to do right by the things you do underneath you, showing you why the judgment that this lady got out went the way it is, because the leaders are corrupt and the officers underneath them are corrupt. Yes, I'll read that again. Sirach 10 and 2. As the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. And what manner of man the ruler of the cities, such are all they that dwell therein. Yeah. There will be no righteous dealings until we actually get into the kingdom. And this is why it's imperative for us to get ourselves right, so we can get into that kingdom. Yeah. What does the scripture say? This is Amos. Amos 9. Amos 9 and 8 says, behold, the eyes of the Lord power are upon the sinful kingdom, and I will destroy it off the face of the earth. Yeah, so the Most High looking to destroy this place because it's sinful. But what he will do is set up in due time one that is profitable over that kingdom. So saving that I will not utterly destroy the house of Jacob, saith the Lord. And that one that's going to be profitable is going to be the elect of Israel, the saints, as the scripture says, shall take the kingdom. This is Second Esdras 15. I'll start 5. It says, behold, saith the Lord, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. Why? For wickedness has exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and the earthful works are fulfilled. So when it comes to this world, this is a sinful kingdom. It says wickedness has exceedingly polluted the whole earth. So only when we're in the kingdom can we look forward to living in righteousness, man. That will never happen on this side of the fence. But yeah, something I want to touch on quickly. I saw this article, for I'll bring some scriptures out just to clarify why these things are actually happening, man. Oh, here's a quick one. Job. Because what do we read in Proverbs? I'll read this again. Proverbs 29 and 2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked bear rule, the people mourn. Now this is Job 9 and 24. Let's say, it says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. So we know who's bearing rule. This is why the people are mourning. Yeah. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof, if not where and who he is. And who is he, Slakia? But the point of what it is that the earth is currently given into the hand of the wicked. Yeah. So yeah, this is the condition of the battle that we have to go through, man. But it's best for us to suffer for doing good than to suffer for doing bad. With that, I'm going to close out. Give all glory, honor, and praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Baharaka Kadash, Kwame Sha'ala.